So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Kim Possible, so let's start the series. Kim said, "Ugh, I can't believe I got detention," as she passed the shopping center. Naruto said, "I don't really see the problem with it, you just spend an hour in a room doing something quietly, more than anything it's like an extra hour of homeroom," as he accompanied her into Club Banana. Naruto shook his head at the pricing as he pulled a top off the rack. Smarty Mart had the exact same item at a quarter of the price, but Kim naturally refused. Kim remarked, "It's not about the time wasted, Naruto, it's about the fact that I, as a cheerleader, have to go to detention. Cheerleaders don't do detention," while scanning some shoes. Naruto said, "Kim, anyone can get detention, as long as you're a student, and you're a student first and a cheerleader second," while Kim held out a dress. "Kim, I've told you many times that you can pull off almost anything. If you're asking for an expert opinion, you're asking the wrong person," Kim said, spinning around and presenting it while looking expectantly at Naruto. Kim smiled as she examined herself in the mirror before choosing to replace the dress because it was from the previous season and wasn't quite old enough to be deemed retro. Kim put her head in her left palm and sat on a seat as she left the store. Kim lamented, "It's not just about the fact that I'm a cheerleader, it's knowing that I'm going to have to deal with Bonnie's harassment tomorrow," while teasing her hair with her right hand. Kim, like Ron has said countless times, you fight criminals and save the world, why does dealing with a 14-year-old girl bother you? Naruto replied, putting his right arm around Kim's shoulder as he sat down next to her. "When I'm out there helping people, it's not about me, it's about them," Kim said, leaning into his shoulder. "I enjoy helping others, and as long as I'm doing it for someone else, it's not an issue. However, when it comes to myself, things get difficult, and I worry about what other people think of me. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help myself. In addition to the fact that I can't just deal with people like Bonnie the way I deal with criminals, I can't just punch or kick them into submission because that's illegal," Kim concluded, crossing her arms and frowning. "It gets worse when I realize that I've been all over the world and I've seen so many different kinds of people, but people like Bonnie just get on my nerves." Naruto pondered for a long, letting the silence loom over them. It was, to put it mildly, a dilemma. Kim had no trouble dealing with criminals since she didn't consider them classmates. To her, they were crooks who didn't merit more than a passing glance. Regretfully, their high school peers weren't treated the same way. Anyone may become irritated by having to deal with Bonnie all the time. After receiving a raised eyebrow, Naruto clarified, "I don't have an answer to that, I really wish I did though. Well, I do, but I know you'd say no." Although it was an alluring offer, Kim simply shook her head and said, "I have Bonnie transferred to a different school," suppressing a giggle. She couldn't do it to someone or have someone do it for her. Hearing her emphasize the word right, Naruto couldn't go without a compelling cause. "Come on, let's go, I need to be home soon, you're coming over tonight, right?" "Yes, I'll be there at midnight," Naruto said in a dejected tone. "Spankin'," Kim murmured as they departed the shopping center. Raising the window, Naruto crept inside, being careful not to create too much noise. He moved to the room's bed and attempted to slip between the blankets, but a voice stopped him in his tracks. "You're late," Kim muttered, half awake. Naruto muttered to Kim, "I apologize, I lost track of time while working on something." When Kim heard Naruto reply, "But I like being the little spoon," she grinned. "Just for that you have to be the big spoon," Kim muttered. Kim laughed at his answer, relaxed, and went back to sleep. But Naruto didn't go to sleep right away. He held Kim so tightly that he could see she wasn't wearing a bra. Once more, He fell asleep shortly after complaining that he had instructed her to wear one while they slept together. September 6, 2003. Naruto kept himself off the floor and held his breath beneath Kim's bed because he didn't want James to see, hear, or even smell him. It would be extremely difficult to explain his early presence. After hearing him down the stairs, Naruto waited for 30 seconds before lowering himself slowly to the floor. He then rolled out from beneath the bed and slowly rose up because he didn't want to unintentionally witness Kim taking off her clothes. Naruto sat on her bed and said, "Kim, I thought we talked about you wearing a bra when I'm sleeping over." "But it's so uncomfortable to sleep in," Kim said, pouting like a puppy dog. Naruto quickly looked away. Naruto crossed his arms and remarked, "Be that as it may, I don't feel comfortable doing this and you not wearing underwear." Kim said, "Naruto, you don't like doing this period," as she started to take off her clothes in front of Naruto. "I don't like sneaking around behind your parents' back," Naruto muttered, quickly closing his eyes and frowning. After giving his words some thought, he realized that they didn't sound like what he meant. "That came out wrong. I mean that I don't like betraying your parents' trust," he said. Kim said, "And just how are you betraying my parents' trust, after putting on her clothes?" Kim chose to reiterate what she had said numerous times, "I'm sneaking into their house once a week to sleep in the same bed as their only daughter." Any parent would freak over that, while flicking his ear. "You only sleep once a week. If you didn't sleep here, you wouldn't sleep at all. For some reason, you can sleep only when you're near me. That means that it's my responsibility to make sure that you do," Kim said while pointing her finger at his visage. Naruto, who was getting dizzy from staring at her finger, saw the resolution in her expression once more and realized that he couldn't make her change her mind. Naruto sighed and raised his hands in surrender. Kim could be so obstinate. "Naruto, how come you're in here?" Kim hurriedly scrawled into her pad, and when she saw the words go, she knew he understood. Smirking, Kim saw a specific mole rat appear. "I told a teacher that Romeo and Juliet is a terrible play and that Shakespeare wrote many better plays," Kim said. Naruto sat next to Kim at Bueno Nacho and said, "Thanks for getting us out of there, Ron. However, you might want to hide Rufus from Barkin later on or he might just give you detention." Ron said, "I'm telling you, he is out to get me. I looked at him funny once and he's been after me ever since," while completing his order. As Kim sipped her drink, she queried, "Why did you look at him funny?" But her gaze kept wandering to whatever hideous thing Ron was creating at the moment. Ron partly yelled as his arms flailed around, "I thought I saw a booger. I was gonna tell him about it, but then he gave me detention." Kim looked at Naruto and remarked, "That reminds me, how is Romeo and Juliet a terrible play? Two star-crossed lovers who die in each other's arms, that's romantic." Looking disgusted, Naruto responded, "It's a play about two horny teenagers who couldn't control themselves and then got everyone around them killed. There's nothing romantic about it, it's a tragedy for a reason. It's even more tragic that out of all of Shakespeare's plays we have to learn about that piece of crap." Ron took a bite and his eyes curled up slightly at the taste. Ha. "Kim, Naruto, I want you to see the crowning achievement of all humanity, the Neko, the perfect blend of nacho and taco," he said. Ron said, "Do you guys want some?" while Rufus ate a large portion of the Neko. They shook their heads in surprise when Kim's communicator sounded. She took it from her pocket and responded, asking, "Hey Wade, what's the sitch?" Wade said smugly, "I investigated our mystery thief and it turns out that she was spotted taking a private jet to a private island." Naruto leaned into the camera's field of view and questioned, "What about her history? Any info on that?" Wade responded, appearing irritated, unfortunately, no. You'd think that someone who wore a green and black outfit like that would be memorable. Naruto remarked, well, I guess you're going to have to expand your search, as he stepped out of the frame. Wade gave Kim a wink and said, I could, or you could do it, before hanging up the phone. Naruto grimaced at the blank screen as he snapped his head back to the communicator, while Kim merely grinned. The winds immediately started to buffet them while Kim and Ron checked to make sure their packs were safe. Ready? Naruto asked, receiving a thumbs up, and opened the door. Ron was busy adjusting his suspenders when Naruto exclaimed, Ron. I added suspenders to your pants to see if they'll stay on finally. Go called for them to leap, and Kim and Ron did. However, Ron screamed both before and during the leap. After observing them transform into tiny dots, Naruto returned to the controls and examined Team Possible's vitals. Naruto sighed and took a seat to wait. When Naruto heard an explosion, he was shocked to see the island exploding. He checked the clock and found that less than 30 minutes had gone by. Naruto quickly noticed Kim and Ron in the sea and turned off the ship's cloaking, flying down to land close to them and setting the ship on the water. Naruto was not shocked to find that Kim and Ron went straight to change out of their mission suits after he opened the door and dragged them into the ship. However, he was pleasantly surprised to see that Ron's suspenders held and kept his pants on him. Naruto returned to the controls and put the aircraft on an autonomous course to return to Middleton. When he heard a faint shout, he laughed and saw that Ron had tipped over. Smack! Ow, Naruto remarked, rubbing the back of his head as he gazed at Kim. It seems that she disliked physical humor. Naruto rubbed his head and said, so what happened? You two were in there for less than a half hour, even though it still hurt. Kim had incredible power for such a petite girl. Well, we got caught before we could even infiltrate the lair. After that this guy named Dr. Drake or something tried feeding us to his pet sharks, so, we escaped the sharks and then we were able to retrieve the disc for the cybergenetic tick and then we got attacked by Shego. After that, some lasers were activated and the lair exploded, Kim said casually as she took a next to Naruto's. Ron wiped his hair and said, you know, I'm wondering about how that happened. I don't buy that chain reaction excuse Shego gave. Ron simply shrugged his shoulders, but Kim said, wait, wasn't he talking about attaching small bombs to his tick? Maybe that's what did it. Kim crossed her arms and placed her feet on the controls, saying, anyway, let's get this back to its rightful owner, so set course to the Amazon. Naruto glared at her and pulled her feet away, which caused Kim to pout at him. Naturally, Naruto simply turned his head, and he smiled as Rufus giggled behind them. Kim pouted even more, and Ron simply dozed off. September 7th. 2003. So, did the Barkin get you as well? She was going to reply when she noticed that she was being gazed at after words appeared on her pad. Kim said angrily, what are you three staring at? The words, cheerleader you've got a zit, said Junior flatly. Vinny corrected, cheerleaders don't get zits, in a patronizing manner. In an odd epiphany, Junior said, oh, then maybe it's a tiny explosive device. Kim swiftly took out her compact and verified that she did, in fact, have the nanotick. Barkin said, not this time possible, no exit, as he prevented Kim from leaving. Crap, Mr. Barkin, I got a G dash. Sorry Mr. Barkin, Kim cried, backflipping onto her desk and then leaping over Barkin. Barkin's warning was interrupted as he noticed that Naruto had fled out the door in his moment of surprise. No one escapes from M-. Those two are going down. Naruto was worried when he noticed a hovercraft pursuing Kim and Ron as they sped away, but he soon realized he had no means of keeping up with them until he heard tires squealing when Barkin was operating the student driver's car. Naruto ran quickly, leaped onto the car's roof, and had to cling on when it started to swerve. He tapped the passenger side mirror to see the surprised expressions on everyone's faces. Big Mike swiftly dropped the window for Naruto, who barely managed to get inside. Follow them. Naruto hurried away while keeping a close watch on the hovercraft, which looked to have lowered a ray-like object, though it didn't seem like the person operating it could handle it effectively. When Naruto noticed that Barkin was murmuring to himself, Junior's question, "Are you talking to yourself?" diverted his attention. Barkin shouted, "Never distract the driver," as he fully turned to face Junior. When Naruto noticed the gravitomic approaching, he exclaimed, "Eyes on the road." Naruto was prepared when the automobile started to float up, so he got out and climbed onto the roof. Naruto said, "Sorry about the roof, Mr. Barkin," as he leaped as hard as he could, causing minor dents in the roof. Naruto quickly swung himself up and landed on top of the hovercraft after grabbing the ray and starting to turn it away from the automobile. He was relieved to see that it dropped the car back onto the road. As he startled the baddies, Naruto exclaimed, "Hello. You must be Dr. Drake." Draken raised his fists at Naruto and exclaimed, "It's Dr. Draken. How have none of you heard of me?" Naruto honestly responded, "It's because you aren't that big of a threat." Shego's laugh only made him smile. Pointing to Naruto, Draken yelled, "Shego. Make him pay." Shego was unprepared for Naruto to duck beneath her and then push her with his back, sending her flying off the hovercraft, as she jumped at him with glowing green hands. Draken backed up slowly in the small space he had available and cautiously said, Can we maybe talk about this?" Gazing directly into Draken's eyes, Naruto said, "Sure, just deactivate the tick on Kim and you can go." Draken remarked in amazement, "Wait, it's on her." Naruto's stare, however, caused him to swiftly press buttons to turn off the tick. An automated voice said, "Detonation sequence activated." Draken said, oh," as he cautiously turned to face Naruto, only to discover that he had vanished. Ron asked Ned, "We need the most dangerous chemical known to modern man, Diablo sauce stat." Ned swiftly grabbed one and tossed it to Ron, who was just in time to catch it. Green energy blasted the hot sauce. Shego grinned and said, that tick isn't going to come off," just as Naruto knocked her out with a knee to the back of the skull. Naruto snatched up another package of Diablo sauce, ripped it open, and rubbed it throughout his right hand. He carefully picked up the tick and hurried outside, where he saw Draken still fumbling with his controls. He threw it at the hovercraft, and the tick stuck to the bottom of it. Draken decided to leap from the hovercraft after hearing a ticking, and he was able to seize the Bueno Nacho taco as it exploded. Draken clung on the taco as it whirled around and screamed, "You think you're all that, but you're not." The air was filled with sirens as SWAT arrived to take Draken and Shego into custody. Kim questioned, "Who was he yelling that at?" as she and Ron left Bueno Nacho. Naruto grimaced and held out his palm, where the salsa was slowly bubbling. "No idea, but Ron, you know how to get this stuff off of my hand." "It's starting to burn," he said. "Water, but you might want to start washing it off now before it starts causing third-degree burns," he said, drawing a wide-eyed response from Kim and Naruto. Ron rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Yeah, Diablo sauce is actually being discontinued because it caused a number of third and fourth-degree burns." Naruto hurried back inside and started frantically washing his hand with water. Outside, though, Kim was preoccupied with embracing the reality that she still had to report to incarceration. Naruto moaned, "Ow," as he struck the desk with his scorched palm. Kim warned Big Mike, "Be careful there, or you're going to aggravate your burn injury," while she painted his fingernails. Naruto said, "Yeah, well, the pain is nothing compared to how betrayed I feel," as he narrowed his eyes and looked at Big Mike. As she concentrated on adding glitter to Big Mike's fingernails, Kim remarked, "Naruto, your fingernails don't need nail polish, the natural shine and shape your nails are in are beyond perfect, it makes girls jealous that a boy has better nails than them." Naruto remarked, "Yeah, well, everyone likes getting dolled up every once in a while, Kim," as he glared at Junior while he had his nails done. Barkin yelled from his desk, "I can't believe it, Possible has ruined the holy time known as detention, what is wrong with the world?" as Ron merely stood smugly grinning off to the side. Toru gloatedly said, "Now tell me, who is the mightiest?" Jade said, "Give you a clue, from the door of the aircraft." Before Jade jumped, Toru turned around and saw the little glow of the talisman activating. Jade yelled, "Hiya," and kicked Toru into the same home where he had knocked El Toro and Jackie. "Can I keep it, Jackie?" Jade begged as she landed on her feet and rushed up to Jackie. "No," was Jackie's prompt response. "Ah," Jade's reaction was. Kim said, "Boo, green leather," as she gazed at the Club Banana catalog. Wade stepped on the communicator and interrupted, "Kim, I've got some bad news." As Kim reclined into her bean-bag chair, she said glumly, "No kidding, I can't afford this jacket." "Yeah, your bank account is empty, you're broke, but that's not important right now," Wade replied. Kim questioned Wade for details before exclaiming, "Have you been reading my diary?" "Of course it's important, did you hack into my bank account?" "I tried to get into your diary, but Naruto put some kinda weird protections on it, I couldn't figure them out, and of course I hacked into your bank account, I hack into Ron's all the time," Wade said before consuming his beverage. Confused, Kim inquired, "Naruto hacked into my computer too?" I don't think so, your own personal computer has all kinds of protection on it that I can't crack, so it's more likely that when Naruto was upgrading your computer he put those in," Wade replied. Kim frowned as she attempted to recall the date of Naruto's computer upgrade. "Wait, Naruto upgraded my computer over 2 years ago, so the dash," Kim was cut off when Wade spat. With wide eyes, Wade exclaimed, "Are you telling me that your security is over 2 years old?" "I think so." Kim asked uncertainly before thinking it would be best to stop talking about it. "But what was that bad news you were talking about earlier?" When Wade realized why he had phoned in the first place, he replied, "Oh yeah, Draken, your archfoe has escaped from prison." Kim got up and questioned, "Since when is he my archfoe?" She needed to fetch Ron and meet Naruto so they could find Draken. With his best Draken impression, Wade retorted, "Well, when he was in jail he was repeatedly heard saying that Kim Possible thinks she's all that, but she's not." As Kim bid her parents farewell, she replied, "But Naruto was the one who did the foiling, so shouldn't he be the archfoe?" "Wait, does he even know Naruto's name?" He lifted an eyebrow in perplexity and said, "No idea, but does it really matter?" Kim said as she made her way to Ron's residence, "Of course it matters, I don't want my own rogues gallery. Look, for now, classify him as Team Possible's archfoe, that way we all have equal responsibility." Wade signed off, saying, "Can do, good luck on the mission." "Ron, Draken is not my archfoe," Kim shot back, irritated at Ron's charge. Ron had heard Kim say that Draken was Team Possible's archfoe on the way to Naruto's house. He retorted that Draken was Kim's worst enemy since, after all, he was an expert at running away. He didn't stop criminals. Instead, he diverted attention and understood his position. When Naruto's voice came from a concealed speaker beside his front door, Ron's perfect reasoning was thrown off balance. Then if he's not your archfoe then he must be Naruto's, Ron said. Nope, sorry Ron, according to the official hero supervillain rules of conduct, your archfoe is the first enemy you meet that continually gets in your way, therefore that's both you and Kim, Naruto said with a scowl. Kim put her hands on her hips and said, Naruto, you wrote that book and posted it online. No one actually follows them. As he studied his printout of the official hero supervillain rules of conduct, Draken told Shego, Shego. Your archfoe is the first enemy you meet that continuously gets in your way. Therefore, if Kim Possible gets in my way again, she is my archfoe. As she drove into the tundra, Shego remarked, you got that book off the internet, it's probably something some kid whipped up. Draken looked up from his book and said, Shego, you can't just put official on any nilly-willy thing you want. If it has official in its title then it must be official. All Shego did was roll her eyes. Naruto said, Kim, I could just buy you the jacket, after learning about Kim's financial difficulties. Kim swiftly shut down his suggestion, saying, Naruto, you already fund Team Possible, I can't in good conscience let you also buy me something just because I want it. Ron said, leaning back with his hands behind his head, why not KP? He funds my Bueno Nacho meals. Rufus briefly stuck his head out Ron's pocket when he heard Bueno Nacho, but he quickly returned when he saw that there was no genuine food. Kim crossed her arms and scowled at Naruto as she said, Ron, if Naruto didn't fund your Bueno Nacho meals you'd put your whole family into bankruptcy, by the way, that makes you an enabler Naruto. As Naruto unintentionally flashed back to the moment he learned what mystery meat was, he said, there are worse things he could be doing, it's also partly why I make us all lunch. Gotta make sure that Ron actually eats something besides Bueno Nacho, and I'm not talking about the mystery meat they serve in the cafeteria. I still have flashbacks about that. Naruto shuddered and replaced the terrible memory with a pleasant one. The other reason is as thanks for teaching me how to cook, I cannot tell you how often I used to eat instant ramen, I got sick of that crap, now, I only buy the expensive kind, though once in a blue moon, I get Ron to make me some from scratch, Naruto said with a little dreamy expression. Kim was able to bring Naruto back to reality by snapping her fingers. After saying, anyway, I'm not gonna let you buy me things, Kim crossed her arms, sat back in her comfortable chair, and closed her eyes. The only person who knew exactly how much money he made was her. Wade had a hunch, and Ron couldn't really keep a secret, so he wasn't told. Naruto frowned as he attempted to figure out why she wouldn't let him grab her belongings. Smirking at the scheme that was developing in his mind, Naruto knew what he was going to do, even if she stated that he couldn't buy her anything. Alaska. As Naruto looked at a satellite image of the region, he said into his headset, Kim, Ron, you two should know that Draken and Shego are near the Trans-Alaska pipeline. There's a laser drill right next to the pipeline, if they're after the drill they might target the pipeline, if that thing gets damaged the ecological disaster will be catastrophic. As Kim said over the microphone on her helmet, copy that, we'll make sure the pipeline stays safe, though that means that Draken and Shego might get away. Naruto retorted, you might have to let them go. With a frown, Kim simply accelerated her rocket board while Ron maneuvered his snowmobile behind her. Naruto removed his headphones and turned on the ship's communication system. Naruto grinned and said, Koko, baby, I need a favor. Naruto, darling, for you I'll do anything, what can Koko do for you? As she drove Shego's snowmobile over a mound of snow and away from the pipeline, Kim thought, ugh, Naruto was right. As she drove off the ramp, she pulled the snowmobile away from herself and turned on her rocket board. Ron was pulling up along the pipeline as Kim flew away from the exploding snowmobile, or at least he tried before the snowmobile stopped short, sending him flying and causing him to lose his trousers. When Kim jumped down to assist Ron in getting back up, she noticed that he was holding something. Ron, what's that? Kim asked, pointing to the green object in his palm. When Ron looked down and realized he was holding anything, he said, I tried to grab Shego and I ripped a piece of her jacket off, whoops, he said, laughing uneasily. Oh, Shego is gonna be so mad, Kim said, grinning crazily. Naruto said, you might want to sit off the next Draken mission, Ron. Shego seems like the kind of person to hold a grudge, while holding the quite large piece of leather that Ron had torn off. When Naruto looked up at Ron, who was putting on some new pants, he wondered if his friend had some strange power over probability. However, he quickly dismissed that thought because if Ron did have that kind of power, he would have abused it by now. It was astounding how Ron had managed to tear off a piece of leather. Setting down the leather, Naruto questioned, so, the suspenders didn't work? Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, the loops and the seams opened and I went flying. I was just lucky you told me to wear this thermal underwear or I'd be freezing, Ron said as he stroked his pants. Ron said, oh by the way, can you get Rufus some clothes for missions like these? The poor guy was freezing outside, while he dragged Rufus out of his own tiny hot tub. Naruto quipped, sure, I'll knit him a suit. Ron smiled and said, cool, that would mean so much to him. Rufus bobbed his head up and down and replied, aha. Naruto assumed that since it had flown over his head, he would now have to knit Rufus a snow suit. With a shrug, he concluded that he needed something to pass the time during the night besides paperwork and machine work, so why not knit him a snow suit? Kim told herself, fleece is perfectly acceptable for cold climates. Shego doesn't know what she's talking about, as she examined her jacket in the bathroom mirror. Since she had left the door open, Naruto, Ron, and Rufus raised an eyebrow at her and questioned her. September 16, 2003. Ugh, I can't believe that all my parents were able to come up with was minimum wage, Kim said with a smile. As he consumed his burrito, Naruto said, Kim, you could easily become a stunt double with your skill set. As he and Rufus ate a Neko, Ron remarked, hey, he's right KP, with all the stuff we do, being a stunt double should be a cakewalk. You're young, and that's the only issue I see with it, Naruto remarked after devouring his meal. Kim cocked an eyebrow at Naruto and Ron and said, oh yeah? Aren't stunt actors supposed to be in a union? Unions help protect workers from those trying to take advantage of them, unfortunately, because you're so young they'd say no and film directors wouldn't allow you to work for them either, Naruto said after eating his taco. Kim questioned Naruto incredulously, then why did you bring it up in the first place? So that you keep your options open, you're thinking too small, you could go the Peter Parker route, snap photos of yourself in action saving the world, I'm pretty sure that a lot of magazines would pay big bucks for that, Naruto stated as leaning back in his chair. Kim said, I'm not going to charge people to buy photos of me, and she scowled at Naruto. Ron said, hey, you think people would pay to buy photos of me, as he considered how much money he might have. As Kim attempted to grin, Naruto simply shook his head in agreement. I'm sure that plenty of people would pay to have your photo, Ron, Kim said. Naruto observed Ron's expression as he responded negatively to his query and replied, "If you want money, you can just work here in Bueno Nacho. With your outstanding knowledge of Bueno Nacho food, you'd climb up the ladder quickly, and as a bonus you might be able to get your Neko on the menu." Ron stroked his chin, saying, "Well, I'm not sure. You shouldn't work where you eat. And here I thought you wanted to share the holiness that was the Neko with the people." Ron, TSK, I guess the Neko lives and dies with you, Kim said, spotting an opportunity and going in for the kill. She smirked at the wide-eyed expression she received. It appeared that she would be working with a colleague. Naruto said, "Kim, you've got to start wearing more hats backward, before snapping a photo." As she adjusted the hat, Kim questioned, "And why is that?" Naruto said, "Because it makes you look cute," before snapping another photo of her grinning at him and lifting an eyebrow. Kim said, "I'll take it into consideration," before leaving to begin her work. Naruto took out his cell phone, dialed a number, and waited for someone to answer. "Sup Wade, any luck in finding the drill?" he asked. Naruto started to head home while holding the door open for an elderly woman to pass through. "Nope, I can't find anything. I haven't been able to find anything through satellite imagery. However, since the drill is so large I should be able to find it through any sort of strange seismic activity. I'll keep you and Kim posted." Nodding, he responded, "It's probably best to look for any suspicious seismic activity before anything else, but knowing you, you probably have a few monitors already set up with real-time activity, don't you?" Recognizing that he was correct, "Anyway, it'd be best to call me first and then we'll decide if we need to tell Kim. She and Ron are currently working, so Kim might not be able to answer you." After hearing Wade hang up, Naruto placed his phone away and went inside his house. "Okay, then, I'll call later," he said. September 18, 2003. As Naruto examined the real-time seismic activity on his monitor, he remarked, So strange seismic activity in Wisconsin." Wade posted a picture for Naruto to view on his desktop and said, "Yeah, it's nowhere near any known fault lines. Also, the epicenter is the world's biggest cheese wheel. Amazingly enough, the entire building is made of cheese." Looking at the cheese building, Naruto said, "Well, it's big enough to accommodate the laser drill, but we can't be sure. It might just be a fault line that hasn't been identified yet." Naruto leaned back and noticed the Club Banana box he had gotten today. This reminded him that Shego owned a Club Banana jacket. Naruto sat up and started to discuss local police reports. Well, what do you know, Wade? Do you see that? 2 recent break-ins at Club Banana, and each time what was taken was a green leather jacket." Naruto grinned. "Wasn't Shego wearing a Club Banana jacket?" Wade added after noticing Naruto nod. "I don't think Shego is the type of person to buy her stuff," he concluded with a sneer. Naruto squinted at the cheese factory and asked, "Very true, but now what is Draken up to?" Wade, perplexed as to why Naruto was asking, obviously he's going to drill into the Earth's mantle to bring up all of that molten magma. As he tried to figure out what Draken was intending, Naruto said, "Yeah, but what is he gonna do after that? Is he going to try and submerge Wisconsin in lava? Because if he is, he picked a really stupid location. All of that cheese would melt long before he could pump the magma out." I'm not good at emulating a villain's thought process, so I have no idea, but we both know that Draken is an evil genius. He already knows that pumping that magma out will melt the building, so it's probably something that we can't think of, Wade said, and Naruto concurred. Despite his seeming foolishness, Draken wasn't. "Okay, call Kim, I'll get the ship ready for launch," Wade said, nodding and signing off. Surprised that Kim had come to the hangar by herself, Naruto questioned, "Ron's not with you?" Kim said angrily. He let the power get to his head, as she entered the changing room to don her mission attire. Power? What power? He's a drone. Naruto said, utterly perplexed by her meaning. Kim shouted out of the changing room. Apparently, corporate liked his Neko idea so much that he was promoted, and to make matters worse I got my pay docked. As he waited at the plane's door, Naruto said, "It's illegal to dock pay for minimum wage workers, Kim, and are you telling me that the big wigs upstairs liked his taco-nacho hybrid?" Kim was still frowning and grumbling angrily about Ron as she walked out of the changing room, adjusting her crop top. Also, Ron's angry because he thinks I'm jealous. Me? Jealous of his burrito wrapping ability. Ha! Kim demanded dismissively. As he rested against the door frame, Naruto remarked, "Well, are you?" Ron usually has the hardest time adjusting to anything new, but you usually get everything pretty easily. It'd be pretty easy to get jealous when the opposite is suddenly true. Was I jealous of Ron? I mean, I don't want to be. It's good that he's found something that he enjoys and is good at. We both know Ron has a lot of trouble doing anything new, but he does get better with time, usually, Kim said, her irate expression rapidly changing to a thoughtful one. Kim sighed and lowered her shoulders as she felt Naruto put his arm around her. Kim, jealousy happens whether or not you want it to, ignoring it won't do anything, Kim said, leaning her head against his shoulder. You must accept that you are jealous and figure out why. For example, I am jealous that you and Ron get to sleep every night. I detest this, but I accept it. Next, I determine why I am jealous, which is not difficult because I am always thinking and am constantly inundated with ideas whether I want them or not, so getting even a few hours of sleep is a blessing. From there, I understand that there isn't really anything I can do about it right now, so I just let it go and puff it out. It helps that I've done this about 6 times before, and I don't think I've been jealous of that in at least 3 years, Naruto said after realizing that he was right. It had been more than 4 years since he had last experienced jealousy. Kim was preoccupied with wondering why she seemed envious as Naruto stood gazing at the ceiling in amazement at his maturity. Wow, of all things to get jealous about, and it's just because he was better than me, she thought, but all she could find was that Ron was succeeding while she wasn't. Kim sighed and promised herself that she would apologize to Ron. She turned to face Naruto and grinned upon realizing that he was still in awe of his maturity regarding jealousy. "Naruto, let's go," Naruto said, nodding as he snapped out of his awe. "Wisconsin, the biggest cheese wheel in the world." Looking at her communicator, Kim said, "So, it's actually a cheese building?" "Yup, Naruto and I are pretty sure that Draken is using the laser drill to drill to the Earth's crust, but we're not sure what he's going to do after that. We both agree that he's not going to pump the magma out, because that'd melt the entire building. After all, an evil genius wouldn't do something that dumb," Wade joked. Kim nodded in agreement with their evaluation and went to work. Kim, Naruto, and Wade all simultaneously said, "Oh, my God, he's really that stupid." This was their reaction when Draken told them about their sinister scheme. When he heard Kim, Draken said, "Stupid? Would a stupid person know to use a cheese-covered building to hide the location of their stolen laser drill? No, a stupid person would use a cheese building to hide the location of their stolen laser drill," Kim said. When Draken heard that she had omitted the term "covered" from her phrase, he remarked, "Cheese building? What are you talking about?" With her hands in manacles, Kim angrily made as many gestures as she could, saying, "This place. It's all made of Wisconsin Swiss. Wait, if I pump the magma out, Then if I love Wisconsin Swiss, Draken remarked as he started to make connections. Kim boastfully said, with you inside, this whole place is going to melt. Ha, so then this entire operation, smugly cutting him off again, was doomed from the start. Sheg dash roundhouse kick. Ha. Draken said, turning his head away from Shego's laser drill operation, only to get kicked in the face. Kim smiled and said, why did you say roundhouse kick, to Naruto? When Naruto clicked the button to release Kim from the manacles, the straightforward response was, I needed a distraction. Kim touched her wrists after lowering herself from her holding position. Those had been a little too tight, she said. Kim said, how'd you get past all the other, as she noticed a guard's unconscious body emerging from a hole in the wall. While pointing to the command center, Kim stated, okay then, I'll keep Shego busy, you go to the drill. Shego was occupied with a display to observe what was happening below her. Got it, replied Naruto. Be careful, Kim and Naruto both said simultaneously. Jinx, they repeated simultaneously. Double jinx, Naruto managed to escape ahead of Kim. Naruto said, ha. I win. Now you owe me 2 sodas, before rushing to turn off the drill. Shego jumped out of the drill control room and rushed after Kim after yelling, hey, Dr. D the Dr. you. Naruto peered through the door and noticed that no one was watching the controls. Smirking, he entered and noticed that none of the controls actually had any kind of indication as to what they did. Nevertheless, these kinds of tools always had emergency shut-off somewhere. Looking around, he saw a large red button beneath the counter. Seeing no other option, he clicked it. As he listened, he heard the laser drill start to slow down and finally stop entirely. Naruto released a breath he had been holding and realized that Kim and Shego were still battling outside the window. He was about to walk down to assist when he noticed Ron running directly toward Shego. Luckily, Shego was startled enough by his appearance that Kim was able to knock her unconscious. When did you contact Ron? Naruto asked Wade over the phone. Wade said calmly, I saw that he was still at Bueno Nacho shortly after you and Kim left, so I told him that Kim was going to need his help. It didn't really take much convincing, though he did have to bum a ride from one of our friends, although Naruto was certain that he was grinning smugly. Naruto heard him scoff, nice, have you contacted the authorities? Wade said, almost insultingly, we've been at this for how long? I think I have the procedure down to memory, which implied that Naruto hadn't already done so. After hearing the phone cut off, Naruto was certain that Wade had been insulted and promised to make amends later. Just making sure, didn't mean to insult you, he said. Naruto took out some shackles as he left the control room since he didn't want Shego or Draken to escape. September 19, 2003. As he reviewed the Colorado state statutes, Ned said, it looks like you are right, Ms. Possible. Docking pay of minimum wage workers is illegal. I shall correct this immediately. Kim said, thank you, as she watched Ned walk back to correct his error, but she couldn't take her eyes off of the green leather jacket he was wearing. Naruto asked Ron, so you're going to be paid for every Neko sold, as Kim returned to their table. Ron said, yup, 5 cents for every one, grinning smugly. Naruto grinned and continued, hey, you might make enough to be able to grande-size your meals for the rest of the school year. Ron leaned on the table and said, that's the dream, my friend. Kim sagged forward and said, well, I don't want that leather jacket anymore. Ron questioned, you saw Ned wearing it didn't you, while being aware of the response. Kim nodded and started using her finger to draw circles on the table, but she was soon sidetracked by a box of club bananas placed in front of her. "Naruto, I already told you I don't want you to buy me things," she said, raising an eyebrow in his direction. "I didn't, I called in a favor from someone I knew, he was more than happy to help, no money exchanged any hands," Naruto grinned. Kim's curiosity overcame her as she narrowed her eyes at his weakness and opened the package. Her shock caught everyone's attention. On top of the jacket was a letter in a club banana envelope. Inside was a white leather jacket that resembled the one she desired, but it had the initials KP written in small, clean black letters close to the collar. "Hello and salutations," Kim said as she opened it. "This jacket was handcrafted by me at the request of a dear friend. He told me about how you travel the world saving and helping people and that you positively adore my designs." Such praise from him was unusual, so I did a little research myself. Imagine my surprise when he actually downplayed your achievements. As a result, I decided to not only grant his request, but to exceed them. Your particular jacket, my love, will always be in front of you. No other place in the world will ever have the same design as yours. I built it out of durable materials and added some flair, so don't worry about breaking it. Cocoa Banana, much love. Kim was unable to breathe for a time after finishing the letter, but she soon launched at Naruto, knocking him out of his seat and onto the floor, where she started to give him a tight hug that made it impossible for him to breathe. Kim shouted, "Thank you," before letting go and putting on her new jacket. Naruto was reminded of Kim's strength once more, but this time it was through an embrace, so it could have been worse. He only realized when she released her hold because he could breathe normally again. He got up and saw Kim examining herself in her new jacket. It looked well with her present green top and blue slacks, but he preferred seeing it with her mission uniform. When Kim's mother saw her daughter enter, she said, "Kim, your jacket is so cute, did you just buy it?" Kim was bouncing up and down and squealing as she told her mother how she obtained the jacket. "It was a gift, Naruto called in a favor from the Cocoa Banana, it's a one-of-a-kind design made specifically for me," she said. Kim stopped jumping when she heard the question, "How does Naruto know Cocoa Banana?" Naruto said into his own phone, "I met Coco a few years ago, I was in Smarty Mart buying some stuff and I literally ran into him. We dropped our phones as we fell, and I accidentally grabbed his, causing him to take mine. I apologized and returned to buying my belongings. Actually, I didn't realize I had grabbed the wrong phone until a few hours later when I started receiving calls from strangers. I then hunted down my phone, but by the time I did, Coco had already departed for Paris, so I had to go wait for him there. More than anything, I believe he was taken aback when I traveled all the way to Paris to return his phone when a simple phone call would have sufficed. We exchanged numbers and have remained friends ever since. Occasionally, he contacts me with strange questions." Naruto concluded his account of how he and Coco were friends by saying, for example, he once asked if tigers were orange with black stripes or black with orange stripes. After learning about the strange inquiry, Kim realized that one of Club Banana's most well-known merchandise lines had a black and orange stripe motif. Had Naruto contributed to the introduction of one of the most well-known lines in history? After realizing that she had said nothing, Kim added, "That's a pretty normal story actually, I was expecting something grand and epic." Naruto said, "No grand and epic tales from me, sorry," while reviewing some details of a project he was working on. If it went as planned, he might have an endless supply of power. Suddenly, Kim inquired, "It's been more or less a week, right?" Naruto quickly halted his data analysis and attempted to recall whether a week had actually passed. As he finished, Naruto recalled that he had not slept since the 5th. Actually, it's been 2, he replied. Kim smiled and said, seriously? Well, you know what that means, right? Yes, said Naruto, accepting his fate, I'm the little spoon. In an attempt to win the debate, Kim retorted, hey. You're bigger than me, I get to be the little one. After smirking, Naruto concluded, you stole my turn last time, I'm just catching up on my lost turn. Kim warned him, saying, you will be the big spoon if you are late. I won't be, Kim said, dang, you're actually here on time, as she let Naruto enter through the window. Naruto responded, I told you I wouldn't be, as he gradually shut the window. While Kim loved being the little spoon, she equally loved being the big spoon, especially when Naruto held her hands like he did now. Kim waited until Naruto had settled in bed before putting her arms around him. Kim closed her eyes and grinned as she sensed his heart beating slowly. Naruto said, Wade, repeat that again, I've been working non-stop for the past few days, my brain is a bit off right now, as he faced Wade on his computer. Wade inquired, distressed by Naruto's unkempt appearance, what have you been doing anyway? You put yourself on lockdown over a week ago, at most you just spend a day or 2 on lockdown. I just finished making a new energy source, a lot of it was just figuring out how to make sure it didn't kill me while working on it, but it was worth it because as of now I have infinite energy, goodbye electricity bill, Naruto said with a smug smile. Seriously? How did you do it? Wade questioned, utterly amazed. Naruto continued, I'll send you the data, I'll make you one later, and attach it to your systems, that way in case something happens to the power grid, you'll still be operational, as he settled into his chair. As he noticed that Naruto was a little more eager than normal to discuss his innovations, Wade said, any other possible applications besides energy production? I'm not even making preparations because we both know that Kim wouldn't permit it, but it can be weaponized if that's what you're asking. Naruto noticed Wade's face light up as he remarked, oh, that reminds me, it can be scaled up or down as needed, so I believe we have the power source for Project Uber. That way we don't have to skimp on any of the more energy-intensive features. Wade, who appeared to be a child who had been informed that Christmas had arrived early, questioned, so that means we can actually equip it with force fields? Naruto observed Wade develop a contemplative look and remarked, yup, I was actually in the middle of retrofitting the ship with one of the prototypes to see how it worked with the power source. Wade answered, cool, before disconnecting and then reconnecting a little while later. Bringing up video footage of the Monkey Fist mission, Wade apologized, I forgot I was telling you what happened recently because we got distracted. Wade explained the events that followed. Alright, so I told you that Lord Monty Fisk asked Kim and Ron to help him get an ancient monkey idol. What we didn't know is that Monty Fisk was actually gathering all of the idols in order to gain access to mystical monkey power, Wade said. Shaking his head at Monty Fisk's stupidity, Naruto exclaimed, wow, he actually believes in magic. Wade remarked, he was right, after noticing that Naruto had made snap judgments. Naruto responded, Wade, I'm exhausted not gullible, in a tone that Wade was aware was harmful. Wade responded by playing the footage of Ron's mission with Kim's halo. Throughout the entire video, Naruto was unable to do anything but gaze at the monitor, which was displaying something he was certain was impossible. Neither Naruto nor Wade spoke after the video concluded. Naruto only murmured, fuck, before he began pounding his head against his desk. September 29, 2003. Wade informed Kim and Ron, All I was able to find was this picture, while displaying Private Dobbs' photo ID. As he emerged in a corner of the screen, Naruto remarked, "I guess it's a good thing I was looking into this too." Draken is after the neutralizer, which Private Dobbs had security clearance to access. Choosing to disregard the Draken menace for the time being, Kim angrily asked, "Naruto, where have you been?" Naruto yawned and said, "I've been working on some stuff." Kim furiously remarked, "You've missed an entire week of school," as she glared at Naruto's utterly indifferent expression. Naruto said, yawning once more, "School isn't that important, and I don't really care about it. Why do you think I keep a B average?" It was actually quite a sight to see her getting so worked up, at least until he noticed that Kim had stopped talking and was staring at him with extremely narrowed eyes. "Naruto. School is dash," was all that Naruto heard before he muffled Kim's lecture. "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" Naruto said, unmuting her, but all he received in return was a glower he hadn't seen in years. Ron, Rufus, and Wade remained silent in the background as Kim asked, "Did you mute me just now?" An irate Kim was a dangerous Kim. Naruto declared, "I'm not answering that," because he thought it would be best to remain silent. Kim gave Wade the order, "Wade, hack into Naruto's systems and shut them down," but she didn't get the desired answer. Wade said, "Kim, if I couldn't hack into your computer, I don't think I'll be able to hack into Naruto's," before cutting off his monitor connection. He didn't want to be anywhere close to Kim and Naruto right now. Kim declared, "This is not over," before slamming her locker and storming off. Ron shouted after her, "What about the neutralizer?" KP, before turning to face Rufus, who could only shrug. Colorado. The ship's cloaking had not reacted well to the new energy system, so they were unable to approach the lair without sending off alarms. Naruto stated, "Kim, I don't want to have this conversation right now," while mounted on his mule. Kim, riding her own mule, stood in front of Naruto and stated, "You may be a super genius, but you have to take school seriously." Ron was really uncomfortable riding his own mule between them. Kim and Naruto had been fighting since they arrived at the airport, but Naruto didn't seem to care. The conversation started to wear on Naruto, who pleaded, "Kim, we are about to infiltrate Draken's hidden lair, can we please keep our priorities straight? We both understand that Shego poses a greater threat than Draken, but as long as we are all present, we will be alright. But if you skip school like this again, your GPA won't be," Kim remarked as they got closer to the lair's entrance, which resembled an abandoned shack in the middle of the Grand Canyon. When Naruto's patience finally ran out, he clenched his teeth and said, "Can we please talk about his later?" Kim responded, "Oh, believe me, we will," not at least intimidated by Naruto. Sadly, Ron was, and he didn't enjoy it when one of his pals became this way. After dismounting the mules, the three of them entered the hut, but Ron was freaking out over something in his pants, Kim was looking irritated, and Naruto was glaring at everything. Kim replied, "Calm down, Ron, I'm sure it's just Rufus," as she became irritated with Ron's antics. Ron exclaimed, "It's not Rufus," as he leaped up onto a pipe and shook his leg. A tarantula emerged from his jeans and quietly strolled outside, allowing Ron to exhale in relief before the pipe he was gripping abruptly fell, revealing an elevator. Naruto said, "Nice job, Ron," and he was genuinely impressed. Neither he nor Kim would have imagined a hidden lever in such a location. When Kim and Naruto reached the bottom floor, they surreptitiously moved through the lair until they came across a machine they thought was the brain switch machine. Ron, on the other hand, loved the elevator music. Brain switching isn't possible, Naruto muttered as he got closer to the machine. But why not suspend disbelief? The day before, Naruto believed that magic was also impossible. Naruto immediately caught up to Ron and Kim, saw that Kim was using the communicator, and heard some muffled screams. He then pulled out a black square and applied it to the machine, smirking as he saw it start to break apart into tiny small black dots that vanished swiftly. Kim quickly grabbed the edge of the crate and pushed it open, revealing Draken, or at least his body, within. Private Dobbs exclaimed, "Kim possible," with joy at seeing her, but his words quickly changed to "look out," as he realized what was behind her. "Rescue is of you," Shego exclaimed before leaping after Naruto. Naruto was caught off guard and was unable to stop the blows that sent him flying. He got up and tried to regain his senses, but he was powerless when Shego punched him in the face with his fist, sending him flying into the brain switch machine and knocking him out. Shego spoke to the unconscious Naruto, "Ah, payback's a pain, isn't it?" just before Kim booted her in the side. Regretfully, Kim had been so intent on removing Shego from Naruto that she was shot into the machine from behind by a goon, and her impact released the brain switch pipes. While attempting to flee with Private Dobbs, Ron unintentionally pulled a lever that triggered the brain switch machine. After being shocked back to consciousness, Naruto and Kim felt as though something was happening to them. After the shock subsided, they realized that they felt different and looked about to see what had happened. When they first saw one another, they both said, "Oh crap," simultaneously. Realizing quickly that they were still in danger, Naruto got to his feet but felt unsteady. He waved his arms to keep himself balanced and managed to stay upright, grabbing Kim and yanking her to his feet before saying, "Come on, we have to go." Kim said, "But we have to switch back," but was powerless to stop Naruto's incredible strength. Is my physique truly that much more powerful than Naruto's? As she was dragged into the elevator, where Ron and Private Dobbs were already waiting, Kim mused to herself. When Naruto punched the button, it slightly dented as a reward. He shook his hand a little and was shocked that there was no pain. Kim was still having trouble adjusting to the height difference, so Naruto took her outside the elevator as soon as possible. They saw the mules and hurriedly boarded. Middleton direction. Naruto observed Kim walking far more adeptly than before and said, "All right, Kim, it seems you've gotten used to my body." Kim remarked as she examined everything, "This is so weird, everything looks so small from up here." Naruto remarked, "Kim, I'm 3 inches taller than you," observing her gaze on everything. Kim remarked, "You know, the jacket really does work quite well with the outfit," once she came to understand Naruto's point of view. However, as Naruto leaned back in his chair a little, she noticed that his chest protruded a little. Her gaze swiftly followed the curve of her abdominal muscles to the bare midriff of her body, and she didn't hear Naruto snap his fingers until he placed them directly in front of her face. "Kim, eyes up here," Naruto said, grinning and pointing to his eyes. However, when he noticed that Kim was panicking, the smirk swiftly changed to a worrisome frown. Naruto said, "Kim, it's okay. You're inside my body and you have to deal with my hormones, just like I'm going to have to deal with yours. I just hope that I don't go all gaga when I see Josh, I've heard that he's hot," as Kim smiled and imagined Naruto becoming all swoon over Josh. Kim struggled to stop herself from staring at her body and thought, "At least I don't have to worry about anything with Naruto in my body." Kim's house in Middleton. James said, "This is just too weird," glancing between Private Dobbs, Kim, and Naruto. "I can't possibly eat dinner while my daughter's arch-nemesis sits right across from me," he said. Naruto dug through his food and said, James, this is Private Dobbs. His brain was switched with Draken's in order for him to steal the neutralizer. Dobbs responded, how do you know about the new dash? Whoops almost said it, as he restrained himself from revealing what he was protecting. Naruto looked up from his lunch and continued, anyway, the same process was done to Kim and I, so for now we'll both be staying here. Sorry about imposing. He was getting odd stares from Anne and James, but then again, any parent would find it odd to hear their daughter say something like that out of the blue. And arched an eyebrow, wondering if Kim was pulling a complex practical joke. I'm a certified neurosurgeon, and I'm pretty sure that it's impossible to switch brains, Anne said. Although it is impossible to switch brains, I chose to use the brain switch machine because it was named that way. It is more likely that our minds were transferred into the other person's brain, so we didn't actually switch brains, just our personalities, memories, and all that positive stuff. Before realizing that everyone was staring at him, Naruto remarked, I'm having the machine examined by some of my nanites right now, so I'll have a better understanding of how it actually operates later. It's also possible that I'm totally off. James said, yup, that's Naruto, as he resumed his meal, and then was only able to shake her head. Naruto heard the communicator and took it from his pocket. Sup Wade, Naruto murmured, and judging by Wade's expression, he knew he wouldn't like what was about to happen. Wade stated, hey Naruto, I've got some bad news, which caused Kim to briefly appear. Wade observed the expression on Kim's face, or rather, Naruto's body, and remarked, Draken has abandoned his lair and he was able to steal the neutralizer. Kim exclaimed in a panic, so, we're stuck like this? Naruto simply shrugged his eyes. Naruto murmured, just relax, being stuck like this isn't the end of the world, before Kim fixed him with her gaze. Kim yelled angrily, I have the cheerleading regional tomorrow. Naruto started by saying, that's not really all that problematic, considering all the possible issues they would encounter. I thought you'd be more anxious over the fact that we need to pretend as each other for a while. Naruto looked at Wade and remarked, oh, this also means I'm going to fall even farther behind on my job, unless. Wade stated, no, I'm not going to do your work, I have my own stuff to do, just before Naruto started to make the puppy dog sulk. Wade remarked, oh that just isn't fair, then he sighed and nodded his head. Wade ended the call when Naruto responded, thank you, with his best Kim smile. Everyone in the room nodded as Kim said, is that what I look like when I do that? As Ron remarked from his seat at the end of the table, it's actually creepy that Naruto was able to replicate it so well. Naruto stated, she's used it on me so often, that I learned exactly how she quirks her lips and exactly how she moves her eyebrows, oblivious to the glance Kim gave him. Kim said, well, it could be worse, at least I know that with you in my body nothing weird is gonna happen, just before she noticed Naruto frowning. Before Naruto grumbled and stopped fiddling with his meal, Kim inquired, what's wrong? I realize that my research is going to fall behind too, he said, leaning back, crossing his arms, and gazing up at the ceiling. That's what you're concerned about? Kim inquired, reluctant to accept that his main worry was falling behind on his research. Naruto heard Kim's tone and added, it's important research. Anyway, why don't you two give me an update on the week I missed? James and Ann had already gone to sleep, the twins had reached their bedtime, and Private Dobbs had fell asleep shortly after eating. It seems that he hadn't received much sleep since he was abducted. God damn it Ron, Naruto murmured as he and Ron sat in Kim's living room conversing. It had been an awkward conversation, but Naruto wondered if Kim was more embarrassed by his naked body or by the fact that he would see hers. Kim was taking a shower after he had reassured her that he wouldn't hold anything she did with his body against her. Naruto looked at Ron and dragged his fingers down his face. Of all the things you could have said, you had to say the place reminded you of a villain's lair. Why did you say something like that? He asked. Ron justified himself by saying, "Hey. Do you know how often we wind up in a villain's lair? If you had been there you would have thought the same thing." Naruto reluctantly said, "You're probably right," after giving it some thought. Based on what he had been informed about the island, it sounded just like a villain's lair, but with a cozier vibe. "So tell me how being popular was," Naruto replied, spreading his arms behind the couch and placing his feet up on the table.